Hello, thank you. I'm so delighted to be here at this year's conference in my hometown of Nottingham. This is not only unusually convenient for me, it also feels entirely fitting. I brought up all my 7 children in Nottingham, and it's always been a vibrant place for music and the performing arts. They all took part in the Nottingham Music Festival when it still existed, when they were small. They competed in Nottingham Young Musician. They've been part of some of the youth orchestras in the city. They performed in many of the wonderful local venues as teenagers, were members of chamber groups, performed at the Hockley Hustle, and were guest performers with local male voice choirs. Their first brilliant instrument teachers were here, and they went to a fantastic local school, Trinity School, and before that Walter Hall's, which both took music seriously. They took their music GCSEs, took music A-level, were part of the orchestras, bands, music groups, choirs, school shows, dance and piano competitions, and regular school concerts. Nottingham has always felt like a centre for music. And we found that out because we decided that bringing up children meant critically bringing them up with music. That meant knowledge of music, lessons in music, and learning to play musical instruments. It meant being taught skills and working hard to develop those skills. It meant respecting what teachers or adjudicators told them and having admiration for the music profession. It also meant having dreams, nurturing ambition, and projecting into the future. So, why music? We had to believe 2 things. One was that music is vital in developing important life skills like empathy, listening, commitment, creative intelligence, memory, self-confidence. The other thing we had to believe was that our children would have a place in a continuing, viable music industry, either as students, consumers, or performers throughout their lifetimes. We had to believe that music would sustain them, and that particularly classical music or live music would be sustained in this country and on a more global scale. That doesn't mean we expected them to become musicians. That wasn't the point. We have a video of the older 3 taken the Christmas they were 6, 5 and 3. I'm asking them what they'd like to be when they grow up. Isita, the oldest, is wearing a kind of ballerina outfit and comes assertively to the screen. "I want to be a pop star," she says. Brymer is next. At the age of 5, he has a very serious, frowning face. "I want to be a builder." Then he slightly corrects himself. "I want to be strong." Then it's Sheiku's turn. He's wearing a silver outfit with a bunch of tinsel around his neck, and in his squeaky voice, looking up at the camera, he says, "I want to be a real angel." Now, that was their childhood vision of the future, but I argue they understood what music could give them. Isita was determined to shine on stage, Brymer wanted a sense of his own significant presence, and Sheiku wanted to soar above everyone as the centre of attention. They, as with so many children, wanted what music could give them, and they thought the dreams in their heads would naturally become real. But we worried. How sustainable was their vision of the future? Would they each have a voice, a presence, or a chance to shine? If they saw themselves in the vision of the pop star, the builder, and the angel, were there role models ahead of them? Was there a profession or a world waiting to welcome them and listen to what they had to say? Were we preparing them for a future that wasn't there? Those children in that video have become a pianist, a violinist, and a cellist. Their 4 younger siblings are pianists, violinists, and cellists as well, although one is 15 and still in school, and her 19-year-old sister while still playing the violin, is now at drama school. But they are very much in the world of music and the performing arts. So, what future have we prepared them for? Government policy, over at least the last 14 years, has been committed to shrinking the budgets needed for music and the arts in state schools, in higher education, and in the classical music industry. But more than that, the messaging we are all subjected to, that parents, schools, and the public are subjected to, causes as much damage to the future of music and music education as the financial cuts. For example, music is not a priority because it's not a core subject, and it's not a core subject because, well, this has its own logical progression. If you strip a subject of its status as an academic subject, fewer pupils and their parents think it's a valuable subject to choose for GCSE or A-level. As a less popular subject with ambitious pupils, the content changes. Fewer pupils have access to instrument learning and music knowledge from childhood, so the content of the subject changes again. It becomes more and more difficult, particularly from state schools, to reach the necessary standard to compete for university and conservatoire places in music, and the level playing field becomes a sliding scale. Those at the bottom of that scale are those who don't, or whose parents don't, see success for themselves or their children in music. There is a minority of non-white and non-middle class people in music, and that is not changing. Because people perceive there are no safety nets in music, no guarantee of financial security or progression, and no guarantee of acceptance. Why make music a priority if it can't provide a future that recognises you or contains anyone who looks like you? It's difficult to become the pop star, the builder, or angel of your dreams if you are led to believe you don't look anything like one. What will sustain our children into adulthood, into the job markets that are there, the changing world of business, the upheavals of AI? If we are to talk about sustainability in any sense, we have to ask what stake each person, group, community and country has in the argument, and whether it's an equal stake. If we are going to talk about climate sustainability, for example, because I know that's part of the theme of this conference, I wonder how many people notice the vanishing minority of black people in UK climate protests. Why is that? It seems like a paradox. Climate change has been adversely affecting countries and communities in the global south for far longer and for many more decades than here. The devastation to what many black people see as their home countries is heartbreaking, and the consequences terrifying. The expanding deserts, rising oceans, more frequent extreme weather, and so on. For my children's grandparents and relatives in Antigua in the Caribbean, for example, the frequency and severity of hurricanes is a real danger. For their relatives in Sierra Leone, the changing patterns of dry and rainy season, as well as the loss of rainforests and fishing stocks, are growing issues. So why are black climate protesters not the majority in the UK? Why does the image of the climate protester not look like us? If we are to make a case for unified action on the climate emergency or on the emergency in music education, we have to bring everyone equally into the argument. We have to make the stake equal for all. Why should black pupils give a fig for classical music or learning to play a classical instrument if there's no place for them in conservatoires, orchestras, the audiences of the future? Why should black people support policies for electric cars and cutting emissions if they can't afford it? Why should majority black countries stop using oil and gas if, without an equal place at the table and equalising financial help, their economies will collapse? I'm talking about two things here: partly because of the focus of this conference and partly because they both emerge from the same issue. There's a lot of frustration that one issue often blanks out the other, that one group has grabbed the stage for themselves and taken hold of the narrative in their own words. We are all affected by both climate change and the loss of music and arts education, but we don't all have an equal stake in the game. We need to talk about sustainability, but we also need to talk about change. And that change has to include everyone's voice and point of view. Inclusion. So I'm insisting that we put inclusion next to sustainability in all areas of debate. When they were small, we worried about our children's place in a music industry, particularly in classical music, where there was and is a dearth of black classical musicians. And in most concerts, a tiny minority of black and ethnically diverse audience members. We worried about role models. We worried about isolation and acceptance. We worried about self-belief and self-confidence. We worried about failure. And we still do. In a conference about sustainability, we need to talk about live music, which we're going to hear very soon. Live performance across the music sector was stopped during and in the wake of the pandemic. Coupled with Brexit and the huge costs and red tape involved in touring, live music seemed to be under an irretrievable threat. However, the concert halls are filling again, the appetite for live music remains. Witness the sellout tours of Beyoncé, Taylor Swift, the scramble for Oasis tickets. Glastonbury sold out within 40 minutes on Sunday. And classical concerts, especially for the big stars, are selling out very quickly as well. So why is live music important? This is where sustainability needs to be examined from several angles. We could ask, if we're talking about the environment, then isn't travel a problem? If we're talking about the planet, why are we promoting the global movement of music artists, orchestras, chamber groups, bands? For music to be a sustainable career, of course, artists and musicians have to travel, they have to tour, they have to give concerts. Recordings yield very little income, and in order to make a living, that has to come from live music. If we believe in live music, we have to decide what is more polluting for our planet. Allowing vast numbers of people to travel to one country to see a particular artist, band or orchestra, or transporting only the musicians around the world. And what are the threats of online and AI? When concert halls and venues were closed, the world of online performances was incredibly important, and I think it still is. Many musicians make their names and build their reputations online, and it makes so much more music accessible to those who couldn't otherwise get near. That doesn't make the appetite and the need for live performance redundant, though, and for musicians of every type and genre, live is vital. In music, the physical, practical, emotional stamina of producing a live performance there in person without editing is a breathtaking skill that takes years of commitment and years of learning how to collaborate. A year ago, I went to see the ABBA show in London. It was fantastic. You could really believe that ABBA was actually there, in the flesh, and not AI or hologram. There was also a live band at the side, of course, but it was impressive. I really enjoyed it, but feel no need to go again because I know exactly what it is and how it goes. It's not live, and it's not the real thing. It's already happened. Great, but not of the moment. For Black communities, AI is an added problem because the fight is similar to that in music. Is it going to look like us? Will it involve our interests? In that ABBA audience of 3,000 people, I counted 2 Black people. That could be that ABBA was not massively popular in certain communities. I don't know. Perhaps it just feels too fake or it doesn't represent us. We have an ongoing family joke about AI, that one of us can stand in for any of the others. It's a musical as well as an AI joke in that the siblings do sometimes stand in for each other on stage. 2 of my daughters, Jennifer and Aminata, can open each other's phones through face recognition, for example. and most of the sisters can easily use each other's ID and enter whatever spaces they want. Because it's easy to overlook what is special and specific about a person, often because of their racial or cultural identities. But we are not AI, and AI is not us. So who gets to join in the debates about sustainability in the environment or in music? In whose image are we crafting the future? And what are we trying to sustain? What are we trying to change? There are many things I don't want to sustain. I don't want to sustain the divide between private and state school funding for music education. I don't want to sustain the lack of diversity, whether it's based on class, culture, geography or heritage, that persists in music conservatoires, orchestras and across the performing arts. I also don't want to sustain the language wars and propaganda we are all subject to. For example, there are important differences between elite and elitist, between excellent and exclusive, and between academic rigour and lack of access. Elite musicians are taught, trained and dedicated to their art in the way that elite athletes are. To work hard and to become excellent at your instrument should be an opportunity open to anyone who wants it and not be the exclusive domain of those who have money or perceived cultural permission. Music can be an academic subject that demands application as well as being accessible to everyone, because everyone has a right to be taught properly. I'm sure we all agree on this. I don't think that's the problem. We all, I'm sure, also agree that we need to do something about the climate emergency and the environment as an issue that affects all of us. What we don't agree on is the terms of engagement. Who gets to be heard? And how do we achieve equality of outcome when we're all starting from a different place? I was in a meeting recently where we were talking about music education, and on the agenda was diversity and inclusion. It was a room full of only white men and me. When we got to this agenda item, one man exploded with impatience. "I'm fed up," he said. "I'm always in meetings where we have to talk about diversity and inclusion all the time. I've had enough. Can't we just talk about it once and for all and put it to bed?" Now, that reaction is usually expressed in different, more subtle ways, but that doesn't mean it's not there. A common approach I've noticed is to decide that diversity can mean many things completely interchangeably. If you are talking about diversity, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about gender, sexuality, ethnicity, class, disability, anything can stand in for another. We don't have to be specific, which means we can ignore and not give voice to whoever we want. If you have included one of the above, you have put them all to bed. Sustainability has become one of those boxes to tick, and if we do something to include that, we get to leave out any and all of the others. Sustainability can stand in for everything else. In a world where freedom of speech, democracy and national pride are all concepts that mean something completely different depending on how much power you have or where you're from, we need to be very careful about our visions of the future. Are they really inclusive? Who gets to join in the debates about sustainability in the environment or in music? In whose image are we crafting the future? Thank you.